Affirmation of the agenda. Deputy Reeve Campbell and Councillor Wadden. All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. None noted. Moving to the consent agenda. Deputy Reeve?
4.3.5. No, 4.3.6, sorry.
Okay. You want it brought in for separate,
Yes.
or do you want to just speak to it right now?
Well, it's something that I think we need to be looking at as far as sending some of our guys away for training for doing this is for leadership of trainings.
Okay. To my knowledge, the head of Public Works is already enrolled
Okay.
to go. Are you thinking that there should be more than that?
No, I just wanted to make sure that he was enrolled to go.
Okay, yeah, it's my understanding that he is. Okay, is there any other points in the consent agenda that
I'll move approval of the
consent agenda from Councillor Wadden, the seconder, Deputy Reeve Campbell. All in favor? Carried. Okay, yeah. So that's moving to. Okay, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adjourns the regular council meeting at 7:05 and that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby, no, that's after. Oh, to enter a committee of adjustment. Okay. And do I have a mover and seconder for that action? Councillor Hallahan? Councillor Knott, all in favor? Carried. Okay. And this being a committee of adjustment meeting, I'll do the call to order and ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. None noted. And accept the agenda. Councillor Hallahan, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga, all in favor? Carried. The Committee of Adjustment Authority. The Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Huron enacted bylaw number 5, 2017, authorizing the appointment of the full council to form the Committee of Adjustment. Hence, it is by the authority of bylaw number 5, 2017, the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, that this Committee of Adjustment shall perform its responsibilities. 5. Appoint a secretary-treasurer. The Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Huron hereby authorizes the appointment of the Township Clerk as Committee of Adjustment Secretary-Treasurer. Do I have a mover? Deputy Reeve Campbell, and a seconder. Councillor Knott, all in favor? Carried. Statement of precedent that any decision reached by this committee tonight cannot be used to set a precedent. 7, new business. File A04 2000 should be 2018. Okay, 2017. The location is concession 4 part north lot of 31, west part of lot 32, East Wawanosh Ward, North Huron, better known as 38 917 Westfield Road. The owners and applicant, Tony and Anita Van Hitterson, Rolling Lands Farms Limited. Laura Schreiner. Okay. Okay.
Good evening, Reeve Council. My name is Laura Schreiner. I'm a planner with Huron County Planning and Development Department, and I'm here today instead of your usual Laura, just for this file. We thought maybe you wouldn't notice because it's the same name anyway. But, there was just a conflict of interest, which is why I'm handling this file. So once the screen comes up, do I need to do anything here?
I know it seems like a long time,
There you go.
but momentarily it will arrive.
Perfect. Alright, so as you said, this is minor variance A4 from 2017. The owners and applicants are Tony and Anita Van Hitterson. So the subject property is designated agriculture. Its zoning is AG1, general agriculture, and the proposal is to construct a new freestall dairy barn on the property. The required setback from the side property line for the said barn would be 30 meters, as it's currently, according to the zoning bylaw. The proposed setback for this barn to the side property line is 15 meters. So the application is seeking relief for 15 meters on that side yard. Technically, this requires a variance of two sections in the zoning bylaw, 4.4, which is the side yard requirement for livestock barns, and 4.5, which is the minimum distance separation setback from the side lot lines. So this is the subject property in question, the kind of brighter yellow outline there. Do I have that? Oh, yeah, look at it. And if we kind of zoom in on the northeast corner of the property where the buildings are, you can see that the property currently contains an existing freestall dairy barn, other agricultural barns and buildings, and a residence. And the star there is showing the location of the proposed new freestall dairy barn, which would be in addition to the barns on the property. This is a sketch we have of the proposed barn from the applicants. We've rotated now. That's Westfield Road on the left-hand side running up and down there. Here. Skills. And so the side lot, side yard in question is indicated here with the yellow arrow. That's proposed to be 15 meters. These are some drawings of the proposed barn that we have from the applicants as well. And this is just a photo of the subject property taken from Westfield Road facing south across the property. We're very close to the side, those trees on the left-hand side are the side property line, and the new barn is proposed to be located in front of the existing dairy barn, so it'd be another dairy barn just in front here. So I mentioned there were two variations required. Technically, one is the setback from a side property line for a dairy barn or for any kind of livestock barn. The second is the minimum distance separation setback. So there are two minimum distance separation calculations that are relevant for this application. The first is the separation distance from the proposed new barn to nearby existing residences. That minimum distance is calculated to be 261 meters based on information we have about the capacity of the barn and existing barns on the property. The actual distance to the nearest house in this case is about 285 meters. So that minimum distance separation is satisfied by this application, and the new barn would be required to respect that minimum distance. So there's no problems there. There's also a minimum distance separation calculation for side lot lines. And for this barn, that distance would be 26 meters. And again, the proposed distance is 15 meters. So that's the second part of the variance that's requested here. From a planning perspective, this application meets the intent of the North Huron official plan. This is an agricultural use, it's an allowed use on the property. An expansion of farming businesses is of course allowed. It also meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw has an intent that there will be an appropriate separation between livestock facilities and houses, and in this case that is met. Firstly, as I mentioned earlier, that primary minimum distance separation calculation or distance is respected by this application. Secondly, though, if you look at the location that's proposed here, the adjacent property that we're proposing to be a little closer to than the zoning bylaw would otherwise allow there's some natural environment, NE2 zoning here, right adjacent to the location of the barn. There's a woodland kind of in there. And then it's a little more open over here and it's zoned AG1. But as you can see, it's undeveloped land. It's kind of an open meadow area. The house on the adjacent property is further over towards the eastern side of the property. So given the nature of the landscape here, it's highly unlikely that any kind of residential use would go in anywhere near the barn that's proposed. So we can see that the intent of the zoning bylaw is met in this case as well. This is also a logical location for the barn on the property. It's located in the smallest field. It's just this small front field here. It's an efficient, logical use of the space and the agricultural land. And it keeps it out of the larger open fields that are tile drained. This application was circulated for comments. No comments from the public were received. The North Huron Public Works had no concerns. They did note the 2 drains that serve the property, which run nearby, but not right in the area in question, so no concerns there. The Huron County biologist reviewed this application, particularly with interest to the natural environment area that's right nearby the proposed barn location. And there were two primary things she considered. The first was any runoff pollution that could affect that natural environment. And given that it's a fully contained barn, there are no livestock yards associated, and the type of manure system it's fully contained within the barn. Also considering the fact that the applicants have completed their nutrient management plan and has been approved by OMAFRA, she didn't have concerns on that front, so she thought that was fine. The second thing she considered was noise pollution from the livestock in the barn affecting any wildlife in the natural environment zone here. But she was satisfied that a 15-meter setback would be sufficient, that there would be no negative impacts there. So given these considerations, this application is considered to be minor. We don't anticipate any negative impacts to neighboring properties. And therefore, the application is recommended for approval with the following 3 conditions, standard conditions: that the barn be located within the footprint indicated on the sketch that was submitted to the municipality, that the barn be constructed as shown in the elevation drawing supplied, and that the minimum that the variance be valid for a period of 18 months from decision.
Okay, thank you. From the applicants, is there anything else you would like to add to what Laura has just commented on?
No, actually not. I think she did a very good job, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, is there any other ones in the gallery that would like to comment, either for or against? Take those for first. Against? Okay. Is there anything that council members would like as more information or questions of clarification on this? Okay. Following all my points here. And that Laura's recommendation is for approval with the conditions as noted. So, do I have a mover? Councillor Hallahan, Deputy Reeve Campbell, was a question or just agreeing? Bill?
No, I'm just in agreement, no problem.
Okay. Any further? Okay, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you, Laura. And we move to the chart. And is there a recommendation as to which?
2A.
2A.
2A for public, and there were some concerns from planning, but I think that they were addressed, so I think you have 2A for the public comments and 4 for yeah, so it'd be 4B, right? Did that not make sense then?
Okay, and you're moving that?
I'll move that.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Biden, all in favor? Carried.
So item number 8, ruling of the Committee of Adjustment, minor variance procedure following public meeting. The Secretary Treasurer sends within 10 days a certified copy of the decision indicating the last day of appealing to the Ontario Municipal Board, OMB, to the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing if requested, each person who appeared in person or by counsel at the hearing, and who filed with the Secretary Treasurer a written request for notice of decision. If no appeal lodged after the 20-day objection period has expired and no appeal has been lodged, the decision of the Committee of Adjustment is final and binding. The Secretary Treasurer shall notify the applicant. If a notice of appeal is lodged, if within 20 days of the Committee of Adjustment making a decision, an appeal is lodged with the Secretary Treasurer outlining the reasons for such an appeal, and said appeal is accompanied by the required fee of $300, the Committee of Adjustment no longer retains jurisdiction over the application. If a proper appeal is lodged, the Secretary Treasurer is required to provide proper notice to the Ontario Municipal Board.
Okay. And the point 9 is adjournment of the Committee of Adjustment. That there be no further business before the Committee of Adjustment. The public hearing be hereby adjourned at Councillor Wyden and Councillor Knott. 7:22. Okay. What we need to do now is that the Council of the Township of North Huron reconvene the regular council meeting at 7:23, and that the council, okay. Mover and a seconder, Deputy Reeve Campbell, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga, all in favor? Carried. And that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accept the recommendation of the Committee of Adjustment that the minor variance file number A04-2017 as it applies to concession 4 part north part of lot 31, west part of lot 32, East Wawanosh Ward, North Huron, 38917 Westfield Road. The owners, Tony and Anita Van Hiddensum, Rolling Lands Farms Limited, be approved with the following conditions. The barn be located within the footprint contained on the sketch submitted by the application to the municipality. 2, the barn be shown in the elevation drawings submitted by the applicant to the municipality. And 3, the variance approval is valid for a period of 18 months from the date of the committee's decision. Do I have a mover? Councillor Knott, Councillor Hallahan, all in favor? Carried. That we need to adjourn the council meeting again for another planning advisory committee meeting. Councillor Vodden, Councillor Campbell, all in favor? Carried. Okay. And that call to order and disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. None noted. File is zoning bylaw amendment. Part lots D, E, and F. Registered plan 173, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron. The applicant is Ron Davidson Land Use Planning Consulting Incorporated, and the owner is GJAJ Holdings Limited, care of Gary Rutledge. The purpose of this public meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is for the Planning Advisory Committee of the Township of North Huron to consult with the public on the zoning amendment identified above. 5, the requirement for the public meeting. This public meeting is required to be held pursuant to the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended, which requires that council shall hold at least one public meeting and that all property owners within 120 meters or 400 feet of the area affected shall be given notice of the meeting by the clerk of the municipality. Pursuant to the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended, council shall forward to such boards, commissions, or authorities or other agencies as councils considered may have an interest in the proposal sufficient information to enable them to understand it generally. And just a second, being that the county is the consent granting authority, that other than myself at county council, there is one other county councillor required to be here, and Art Versteeg, the Reeve of Howick Township, agreed to come to this meeting to observe, so that, welcome Art. And I will go to Laura to present.
Thank you, Reeve, and good evening, council. So a plan of subdivision file 40T17002 and zoning amendment were received for the same property. I'll be addressing both and commenting on both planning applications that were received in conjunction with each other. So this is the public meeting for the property of Plan 173, lots D, E, and F, and for consideration of the submitted zoning amendment. Here's an overview of where the location of the subject property is within the village of Blythe. And you can see it's located on approximately a 9-acre vacant piece of property. So the proposed plan of subdivision contains a total of 16 lots and 6 blocks with residential units proposed on municipal services. Subdivision is proposed to develop with a variety of housing types and include a new interior municipal street to extend from the extension of North Street to the current access onto Queen Street, with a stub of future allowance into the abutting future lands to the west, to the east. The purpose of the zoning amendment is to change the zoning from future development FD to a series of residential zones, R1, R2, -17, R2-18, and R3. The zones will permit a mix of residential units, 16 single detached lots, 19 townhouse units, and a block to permit a retirement home proposed in the future. 2 special R2 zones will permit reduced minimum lot depths and the R2-17 zone will recognize Queen Street as the exterior side lot line, and the R2-18 zone permits a reduced rear yard setback of 5 meters and a maximum lot coverage of 54%. And you can see the proposed draft plan of subdivision. So Queen Street is to the north there. You can see the new proposed extension of Queen Street's to the north, the proposed extension of North Street and the new interior street with the block for R3 in the bottom right-hand corner there. So both the plan of subdivision as well as the plan for the application for zoning amendment have been circulated to the neighboring landowners as well as the agencies to provide comments on the proposed plan and zoning change. Comments were received from neighboring landowners. We received a letter from Margaret Duarte explaining her concerns with the proposed rental units for the 4 townhouses on Block 8 as it directly abuts her rear yard and possible concern with tenants and noise produced and effect on their property. We received a letter submitted from Ernest Dow, including questions about the expected traffic volume on the extension and connection of North Street, servicing along North Street, and drainage and erosion measures. We also received a letter from Brenda Gordon containing questions about the traffic and widening of North Street, future location of an existing hydro pole after the completion of proposed roadwork, stormwater management, fencing, and potential tree removals. More detailed explanations to the proposed questions would be available after full agency comments are received.
Laura, that I received a faxed letter from Stephen Webster.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, we did also receive a letter from Stephen Webster, neighboring landowner to the north as well, with concerns about the impact of minimum distance separation from the proposed development on his property. So that I would be able to address without requiring the technical review from the engineers or Maitland Valley. To date, we have received 2 letters from agencies. We received a letter from the Historic Saugeen Métis with no concerns, as well as a letter from Canada Post, also with no concerns, but recommended conditions regarding postal services once the subdivision was in place. We are expecting comments from E.M. Ross, who's doing the engineering review of the proposed servicing and stormwater management, as well as Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, as they do have a regulated portion of the subject land and are expected to provide comments. Without these comments and being able to address the questions posed by the neighbors to fully satisfy their concerns and questions, I am recommending deferral of this application until the next council meeting so that there is time to accept the comments from the agencies that are required, satisfy the neighbors' questions, and present a recommended draft list of conditions to the applicant and the
Okay. Is there any extra comments from the applicant or the owner at this time?
Yes, I'd like to say a few things if I can.
Yes, please.
Thanks. If you're wondering what the commotion was, there was a bat flying around. And once again, the fire department came to our rescue. You did, didn't you? Well, did you guys know that?
No.
The bat was flying around. That's why everybody back here was kind of laughing or doing a bit of fidgeting, to say the least.
It's kind of normal around there.
I'm Ron Davidson, I'm a planning consultant, and I'm here tonight with Gary Rutledge, who is holding the door. And beside him is Matt Ash. Matt is works for the engineering firm GM Blue Plan. I'm going to be very, very brief tonight. Just say a few words. Laura has gone over the developments. What is being proposed here is a subdivision of 16 single-family lots or detached dwellings, if you will. There will be as well 5 townhouse blocks. And there'll be 4-unit townhouses put on 4 of those, so 4, 4, 4, 4. And then the 5th one will only have 3 townhouses on there. And then the last parcel is in the corner here is going to be for a retirement home. And Mr. Rutledge is in the business of of operating retirement homes. He owns two, one in Ripley, where he lives, and another elsewhere in Southern Ontario. And he's hoping to put in a third one here. Now, these lands are within the urban area of Blythe, as it's identified in the county official plan and the local official plan as well. Your local official plan further describes these lands as residential, which means these lands are slated for residential development of some sort. Gone are the days where in a residential subdivision where you could put in large, say 60, 70-foot wide lots. The province doesn't allow for that. The county does not encourage that, and the local official plan does not encourage that as well. The official plans, and that's a document that's it's like a motherhood document. It tells us how we're supposed to develop land, subdivide land, rezone land. Both at the county level and at the local level, it encourages a mix of residential dwelling types and densities. So again, a number of years ago, other developers probably would have liked to have seen large single family lots, and that simply is not permissible anymore. You need a mix. The county official plan requires 30% of all residential development to be medium and or high density. Now, this is not a high density development, it's definitely a medium density development. But this development will help the municipality achieve that policy. The county official plan also requires 30% of all residential development to be affordable to low and moderate income households. This development probably won't be catering to low income households, but I would describe it as a project that will be geared towards moderate income families. Now, the local official plan also includes policies that require, again, new residential development to provide for a mix of housing types and a range of affordable housing. The local official plan permits some medium density developments to achieve a maximum density of 30 units per gross hectare. And the townhouse development portion of the subdivision represents about half of that. It's just over 15 units per gross hectare. So we're not jamming on a whole lot of lots here and a whole lot of townhouses. The townhouses are actually quite wide. And that's enough with regard to the official plan, and I'm almost done here. As you can see here, the westerly boundary, where my red line is here, it's not straight. And it makes developing this property or designing this property for residential development a little bit challenging. In particular, this one here, this area here, which we call Block 8. It's not all that deep, and therefore we do require relief from the rear yard requirement here. In a perfect world, I'm not sure if we had planners back then, but this lot here, lot line would have been straight and a little bit deeper. But that's not the case, and this is the hand that is dealt. So the question is, how do we develop this? So the answer is, in this one in particular here, again, it's a little bit shallower than the other lots, but we feel that a development of 4 townhouses can fit on there. Before I sit down, there's questions asked, I think, last week from at least one ratepayer about the development. What will they see in terms of the townhouses? It's Gary's intentions to sell the single family lots to home builders or anybody wanting to buy a lot. But it's also his intention to keep the townhouses for his own development purpose. He intends now to develop the townhouses, have them constructed, and either rent them out or sell them individually. And the way they're going to be oriented is that they're all the units, regardless of whether or not they're rentals or owned separately, they will face a street. So there will be no problem in the future running a lot line down the common wall between the units if Gary decides that he no longer wants to own them. When he builds them, they're going to be designed with seniors in mind. They will be single story. They will be constructed inside as if someone that maybe has a little bit more problem with their mobility is going to be living in there. Having said that, he can't control who lives in there. We can't people zone. But anyways, to answer the question, who's going to be living in there, it's Gary's intention to design these for seniors. That's it for my presentation. If there are technical questions regarding stormwater management or the construction of the road or water and sewer extension, Matt's here to answer those questions. Or if you need to hear from Gary himself, he'll be happy to answer the questions. Thank you.
Is there others that would like to make comments? Ernest?
Evening, Honorable Reeve and esteemed council members and staff. I'm a little unsure of protocol. I know some of my 6 points I sent to Brock and Bill. The other council members were not forward copied them, were they?
Yep, they were included on that council.
Okay. If time permits, I'd like to highlight 3 of the 6 points, if that's okay.
Okay, quickly.
What will be the likely effect on traffic volume along the eastern section of North Street? I see there's a proposed outlet onto Queen Street further north, but considering downtown is closest to via North Street, will not the majority of the traffic volume likely be past our house? We're at the left bottom corner there on that diagram. I understand one neighbor is significantly distressed and considered selling their property and moving away because it will mean they enter a quiet cul-de-sac. And just trying to estimate how many people we're talking about here. If you take 35 lots at 2.5, maybe average per household, that would be kind of 70 to 100 people. And then the retirement home, I understand from 20 to 70 residents. So something like Huron Home for the Aged, it has 64 units. So you're talking about a couple of hundred people, which is bumping up the population of Blythe quite a bit by 10 to 20%. Laura responded by saying that the traffic impact study was not deemed to be required for the subdivision as it was not expected to be a significant traffic generator. I say if you got 200 people, there's going to be a lot of driving around. And skipping number 2 and 3, which dealt with the street improvements, water, sewer, paving, and so on. Point 4, Whitfield Drain proper, talking about the actual culvert, which runs through there. And you notice the elevation lines towards the bottom left there are quite steep. There's a fair drop off on the property there. When we purchased our property in 2001, the township and county inquired whether we were planning to develop the 13 lots. If so, it was expected that a 36-inch concrete culvert would need to be installed to replace the current 12-inch steel culvert. In view of the proposed development by the applicant, will this necessitate our property being torn up in order to install a concrete culvert? There are significant blowouts already in several places above the existing steel culvert, some small, and one is about 6 feet deep, 4 feet wide, and 8 feet long. That may be on the township property of Union Street that cuts through our lots there. Anyway, it suggests it's woefully insufficient to handle the volume of water given the fall and associated pressure from North Street down to Union and Thule Streets. And I do have a couple of videos posted on YouTube from 2008 showing the runoff, and it's about equivalent or more the runoff compared to what's coming out that 12-inch steel culvert running full. There's a lot of runoff there. So that's talking about the drain proper. As far as point 5, the stormwater runoff and associated erosion control, a significant gully runs parallel to and east of the existing Whitfield drain 12-inch steel culvert. Some springtime see significant additional major chunks of soil being eroded from the hillside. Around 2008 to 2010, Maitland Valley's Jeff King spearheaded a major erosion control project to incorporate a berm and buffering reforestation measure in order to abate erosion through the section of the Whitfield drain catchment area. Due to poor weather, the project installation was delayed. The following year, the funding was no longer in place, so the project never went ahead. It's about a $100,000 project. Given the proposed development, is this the time the municipality and county should be proceeding with Maitland Valley's previously approved erosion control project? And I've made the document available online. You can send anybody the link if they prefer. Laura, in responding, noted that BM Ross and Maitland Valley, we are still awaiting comments from them, so I'd be most eager to see what they're proposing. in terms of addressing some of these concerns. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else?
Yeah. My name's Peter Yule, and I farm east of that subdivision there. The concern is to what Patrick Dow was talking about is probably the Whitfield drain. I think for drainage and all that, that should come around as being repaired and being looked at, because that doesn't carry water, not at all. Like it goes up and beyond highway, across Highway 4 and up. I think we discussed this before about the Whitfield drain. So, and another concern I have is agriculture on the east side of that subdivision. I'd like to continue on with agriculture. That's not a problem. And I would like to see, honestly, a fence on that side too, because when I'm cutting hay, I put little deers through the hay vine. And I don't want to put little children through the hay vine, you know, when the fields are so high. So if a fence is up there, like security purposes, right? It prevents children from leaving their properties. But don't get me wrong, I'm all for growth for Blythe, you know. I think it's a good idea with the seniors complex and all that. And maybe this owner and me could be good friends after this is all over. So that's all I have to say.
Is there anybody else? Okay, comments from council? Deputy Reeve.
In order, and we've talked about the culvert and things that needs to be fixed up in there. Jeff King would be one that would go and find funding. He would find groups to come in and fund certain projects. This would be a project that he would go and find funding for. But that's something that we need to start doing right away. If that was going, because he looks after all that funding that goes in for that.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah. That meeting, we were at the arena too at that time with Jeff King, and he wanted to put a berm on our property. And I kind of said, no, I don't want that. So I'm responsible for that because I don't want no pond on my side of on my property. I was worried it was going to turn into a great big pond.
Deputy Reeve.
A berm that he would put in now, that water has to be gone within 24 hours.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not for it. I'm not.
You're not
for
for a small berm of any kind to slow the water down. That would just be the purpose of it, would be to slow that water down. And a berm has to let that water all be out of there within 24 hours.
I know, but once you see a fish, there goes Mr. Yule's land, a fishing pond.
No, it's gone in 24 hours. There won't be any fish in there in 24
No,
hours.
I'm not, I know. Fix the Whitfield drain up.
Councillor Knott.
I appreciate the concerns that have been brought forward by all the individuals, and you know, I have to concur with county that really we have to wait for those other reports to come in and take a look at them. I did come up and look at the property on the weekend and drove around, and I see some of the significant drainage issues from when we had our thaw and where the water's running. So yeah, it's always been a problem. I've seen it before. If anything, it's worse than it was a year or two ago. So. But I do think that at this time we really have to wait for BL Ross and the other ones to come in and then sit down. That's we'll work through those compromises of berms, no berms. I think at this point in time, I appreciate everybody putting in their input, and thank you for sending the letters around and pointing those issues out.
Okay. Anything else from council? Dave?
I asked a question here.
Go to the
Oh,
podium, Dave.
I guess that means yes.
Just because you're a good friend.
I'm here because of Brenda Gordon, and I helped her draft this letter. And I'm just wondering, did all the councilors get a copy of her letter? So you've all read her comments, and I'm a little hard of hearing sometimes, but I didn't hear why there has to be an added access. Is that a fire requirement to have two accesses or something, Matt?
Not to my knowledge, this is, this
Is
application.
this convenience then, or why does Front Street need to be extended?
Laura, do you have an answer for that or not?
Well, I guess, for servicing, it's better for servicing to go, and not end in a dead end.
Sir, what kind of service?
Water and sewer, and as well to have a through traffic.
So you have to run the water and sewer through then, but not necessarily the street, or you have to have a street before you run the water and sewer through?
You'd have to have the street for the water and sewer. So
Okay,
it's not going through traffic.
and is this street, like Front Street's pretty narrow there. The plow has put a time going down.
North.
Is it gonna be widened to, it said something about, town standards or
Right, so
municipal standards?
municipal road allowances.
I know Brenda's doorway, and you read the comments here, that the plow is gonna, if it goes by at any speed, it's gonna throw snow up against her door, which would be a fire hazard if she's inside and the fire starts and she can't get out. Is this taken into consideration, or, like, I didn't hear any comments on, or does this get talked about later? Like Brenda's letter had some good points in it, I didn't hear them addressed, but. Right, Brenda?
Okay, basically, we would be expecting the engineering firm to make comment on that. And
So this,
we
these will be
are
addressed
still
eventually?
waiting on those comments to come. Dave.
They will be addressed then.
Yes.
Is that all right, Brenda? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, point 12, the recommendation from the Huron County Planning and Development Department. Laura, can you go through that?
So my recommendation,
Yeah,
so based on the fact that we are still waiting on several agency comments, and we would like to address the concerns that were raised through the submitted letters and presentations here tonight, I'm recommending that council defer making a recommendation to county or motion on the zoning bylaw this evening until the next council meeting, so we can address all of those.
okay, thank you. And so that the recommended motion is that the Planning Advisory Committee hereby recommends to North Huron Council that the zoning bylaw amendment, part lots D, E, and F, registered plan 173, Blythewood, Township of North Huron. The applicant, Ron Davidson Land Use Planning Consultant, Inc., and owner, GJAJ Holdings Limited, Gary Rutledge, be deferred to the next available council meeting to allow additional time for agency comments to be received and considered. Councillor Vaughn moves, Councillor Knott
I
seconding, or
just ask that we put in here that additional time for not just agency comments, but for the comments of the others to also be considered for the. What it says there is we're the additional time for agency comments to be received and considered, but we want to consider all of the comments.
consider the comments
So
from
you just
tonight as well.
Make that
Yes.
small addition in there.
Can you do that, Richie?
Yes, agreed.
That's okay.
Agreed.
You're seconding then,
Yes.
I have a question.
Deputy Reed?
Mr. Rutledge, are you working on a time frame here that you want, when you want to be shovel ready and ready to go?
Yes, please.
Hi, good evening. Timeframe is very important. The original goal was by early summer. That's probably not realistic. We're thinking hopefully by the end of the summer. The initial stage we'd like to do is put a 4-plex up and a 3-plex up, right on Huron County Road, on those 2 lots up the front. So the idea was to start constructing those buildings at the latest now, it looks like maybe by the end of the summer. That was the intent, hopefully.
That's kind of why I asked the question, whether or not we have to bring in, have extra meetings to try and cover some of this
That would
for
be
your time.
appreciated if we could, because time is of the essence. Because with winter and so forth, want to putting infrastructure in if we can avoid it.
Thank you, Gary. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. And we will ask for a motion of adjournment of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting at 7:54. Councillor Knott, Councillor Hallahan, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Okay. Motion to reconvene. Councillor Knott, Councillor Hallahan, all in favor? And that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee that the amendment to the zoning as it applies to parts lot E, and F, registered plan 173 Blythebourne, Township of North Huron, be deferred to the next available council meeting to allow additional time for agency comments to be received and considered. That was adjusted to all comments received tonight. That's Brock, you want to move?
Yes.
Okay, and both seconds. All in favor? Carried. It sounds like there's discussion in the hall. Okay. Moving through the clerk's department, 6.1.1, plan of subdivision. Laura, she's in the hall.
Try to get away on us.
Okay, the 6.1.1, the plan of subdivision. Did you want to
Sure.
make the comments on that, please?
So as discussed, the plan of subdivision is the same as discussed during the public meeting for the variety of single detached lots as well as blocks for townhouses and one block for proposed retirement center. And the new road, interior road that would run through, the extension of North Street and the connection out to Queen Street. And for the same reasons as the recommendation for the zoning amendment based on the comments that were received and questions about the application, as well as not having sufficient agency comments to address them thoroughly, and recommending referral on council's recommendation for the next council meeting for the plan of subdivision as well.
So,
Okay, and seconded by who? Any further discussion? James?
So that's our next council meeting, which will be February the 5th.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, Laura. Okay. 6.2.1. Moving to 6.2.1, the tax arrears certificate registration. Donna, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, thank you. So with the new legislation under Bill 68, there are changes to tax registrations and tax sales. Previously, under the legislation, a tax arrears certificate could be registered if there was 3 years of tax arrears, and now that's been changed to 2 years of tax arrears. So that will be effective. Any property that has arrears for 2016 and 2017 could have a tax arrears certificate registered against the property and start the tax sale process. We have seen an increase in our tax arrears since a few years ago when we started adding water and sewer arrears to the tax roll. And often if they're not paying their taxes, then they're not paying their water and sewer as well. So in 2017, we added $92,338 in water and sewer arrears to the tax roll, which contributes to the high amount of tax arrears. We also have to remember that we're the collector for the county, the school boards, and the BIAs. Even though we don't get paid, they do receive their funding. So just as an outline, in 2017, our total tax levy, including the county and school boards, was $8,241,379, and the total arrears from 2017 was $392,289. So it was about 4.76% for the current year of 2017 of tax arrears. The remainder of the balance of $268,855 is 2016 and 2015 taxes and possibly some prior. So that's the amount that would get targeted under the new legislation, and those would be the amounts that we would be looking to collect first. So we do encourage people to make other financing arrangements, since they would most likely be able to get a better interest rate than what we are able to charge under the Municipal Act. And also now mortgage companies do usually include the taxes in with the mortgage payment. We send out monthly notices, and then in January, which has sparked this process, this is when we send out our tax arrears notices to those that have arrears that could be in the potential position of having a tax arrear certificate registered. It's also with the people going to cell phones and not being registered in the phone book and such. It's very difficult to sometimes contact these people, and so we do still continue to contact them by mail. Also, when a property does sell, we do get the all tax arrears are cleaned up before the property can change hands. So the new legislation will force people to come up with more money to avoid being registered for a tax sale, and it will reduce our tax arrears and also help our cash flow. So I do think it's prudent to continue on with this new requirements under the legislation, and we would be sending out notices of the new effect on that in the next week before the end of January.
Deputy Reeve?
So we have to let people know, Donna, that it's under Bill 68. This is not township.
That's right.
We're under Bill 68 here. In order to win, you just go back 2 years.
Right, but the legislation, the previous legislation wasn't township, it was under the Municipal Act as
Yes,
well. So
this
it's
one
a
is-
change in legislation, not that the township implemented that on their own.
There's the printed motion that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Finance dated January 15, 2018 regarding tax arrears certification registrations, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves Director of Finance's recommendations to reduce the time for registration of tax arrears certificates from 3 years to 2, and further that the applicable property owners be sent notification of the change in legislation. Do I have a mover for that? Deputy Reeve Campbell, Councillor Allahan. Any further comment? All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving through to fire personnel recruitment, 6.7.1. I'll let Dwayne take over on that.
So Deputy Chief Townsend and Krieger are here, so if you have any questions. Essentially, we usually run a staff complement of 22 firefighters per station, and we're currently under that for various reasons. And essentially, what the two deputy chiefs are seeking is authorization to proceed with filling of those fire personnel vacancies. They have approximately 10 applications currently on file. So what they're recommending is proceeding through the process of interviewing those candidates, and there is a physical test that is part of that process. And if they can fill the vacancies from the applications that they have received, they'll subsequently do so. However, if they're not able to fill, if they don't have the candidates to fill those vacancies, then we would certainly advertise. So the two deputy chiefs are seeking permission to proceed with filling the fire personnel vacancies.
Councillor Matt.
I so moved.
Um,
It's acceptable.
the way it's written,
It's more direction, this one, isn't it?
that, and further, oh, yeah. I was getting ahead of myself. I was into the next one. Okay, accepted, seconder, Deputy Reeve Campbell. Any further discussion on that? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, 6.7.2, fire chief recruitment.
Sure, so at the December 11th council meeting, council authorized to proceed with the hiring of the fire chief. And I've been working with the two deputy chiefs and the Reeve. And we had a meeting with a gentleman named Brad Bigrig. He's with the Association of the Fire Chiefs of Ontario. And just in terms of looking at what the recruitment process will be and what are the key attributes that we'd be looking for. So as my report indicates, the association has been involved and has assisted other municipalities with the recruitment process. And their level of involvement has varied. Everything from they would do the hiring for us and completely, or it can be a municipally led process whereby we would determine what involvement they would have in that process. And what they've indicated to us is that they can provide material, like for example, interview questions. They can assist us with advertising. If we want, they can they can have representation sitting on our interview panel as well. So essentially, in terms of other options for fire recruitment, we can consider hiring or looking at a consultant that has been used, a process has been used in the past. I don't want to put words in Deputy Chief's mouths, but or the Reeve, but I think generally speaking, based on our discussion, we all have a comfort level and we're all agreed that it would be beneficial to work with the association. They certainly have municipal interests at heart in terms of, they want to ensure that, the candidate succeeds and in terms of what we're looking for. And they were explaining to us, one of the things that we're going to have to do is, there's managerial aspects and there's operational aspects. So, you have to kind of find what that mix is that we want in a candidate going forward. In addition to that, unless there's any questions about that, we had a bit of a discussion regarding the possibility of sharing a fire chief. And we were tossing around some ideas and suggestions. So that is certainly something that if council so wishes, we will investigate. However, we recommend that in light of our time period that we have, in terms of potentially going into a lame duck period, that we run, that if council so wishes to look at that shared services notion, we can certainly do that, but we would do it in parallel with proceeding with the recruitment process. In the event that if we explore that shared services idea and it does not materialize, that we're still on track to still proceed with the process to have somebody into place. So that is for council's consideration. Council has previously authorized to proceed with the hiring of the fire chief. The why this is before council now is if council so wishes, we will explore or make some inquiries regarding the possibility of sharing a fire chief. So that's why this is before council. Any questions?
Deputy Reeve Campbell.
So that would be added to this motion here to explore
The motion as it says.
the recommendations for it.
Yeah, so if you so wish, I can read the
Go ahead.
So the motion that's recommended is that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of CAO dated January 15th regarding fire chief recruitment. And further, that the Township of North Huron hereby authorizes CAO to investigate the possible sharing of an existing fire chief with another municipality. And further, the Township of North Huron hereby affirms their motion passed on December the 11th, directing the CAO to proceed with the recruitment of a Director of Fire and Emergency Services and to consult with senior fire department staff in the development of the process for recruiting for that position. So I'll certainly be proceeding in terms of developing the recruitment process in concert with the 2 deputy fire chiefs. We're recommending the association.
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second
you're seconding, right? Further discussion.
I just important thing was, so you've discussed this with Matt and Chad, and so we're all on the same page here.
Yeah, Matt and Chad are
Yep.
here, and
Good.
you can
Just
by all means.
said that they were in on
You
the
guys-
discussion.
Any comments?
You explain it, Paul? Yeah.
But, I think the meeting that we had with the representation from Fire Chiefs of Ontario was very fruitful in bringing forward different points and stuff that if we went to a single consultant, we wouldn't have got that wide of perspective as to what all we're trying to get done and trying to make a proper fit for whoever is the new fire chief to do the best we can to have them in a position to succeed in all phases of the job. Councillor
I have a question. I may have missed the point. Are we saying that we're going to initiate the search for a fire chief or this position, but at the same time, we're going to consider sharing that service with another municipality?
Through you, Mr. Reed, essentially exploring, we will proceed with the hiring of the fire chief, but perhaps explore the possibility of sharing. But in terms of the recruitment process, we still have to design the process. We have to develop the interview questions. We'll have job posting, there's that whole process to be undertaken. While that process is underway, investigate or see if there's interest in sharing. And if there's no interest out there whatsoever, that conversation is done. But if there is interest, then kind of what might it look like? And then, we would bring that back to council, obviously, for your consideration.
So,
And another question, there was mentioned at the beginning of one form would be to turn over the total recruitment process to the
Fire
people
Chiefs
you referred to.
Association.
And the other one is for us to be involved in it somewhat. I think that's a very, very important. I wouldn't want to see this turned over totally to an outside group.
And that was the feeling that, but what the representative of the Fire Chiefs Association is, we will do any level in that because we want to see things succeed. Part of the reason for doing both of them together is we want to have a fire chief before we're into lame duck, which
July.
the end of July.
Yeah.
So that to get all the dots to line up in a row, we have to be at it now.
Great.
Is there any other questions? Okay, we have the motion. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Okay, moving to 6.73, the Economic Development Committee. Richard, you want to read that?
Sure. The suggested motion is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves the North Huron Economic Development Committee's request and directs staff to prepare a status report on goals 5.1 and 5.2 contained in the North Huron Economic Development Strategic Plan 2016 to 2019. And further, that the Council of the Township of North Huron request staff to include the status report on the February 5th, 2018 regular council meeting agenda, and further that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby authorizes staff to share the status report with the North Huron Economic Development Committee at their February 1st, 2018 meeting.
Comments? Councillor Knott?
I'll make a comment first, and then, just so that every council members understand that when the, as we were seeking ways to move forward with the Economic Development Committee, it was determined they needed to focus a little more, and that those two areas of business retention and so on were probably the two key areas to focus on, but that there had been no status reported any time with regard to any progress that had been made under the plan. So that's why we made the decision to come back and ask council to authorize staff to look at it and tell us what progress had or had not been made over the last couple of years, so that the Economic Development Committee can then use that as a determination to move forward and narrow down the focus where we figure that we can do the most good. So that's what that's about. I'll make the motion at the same time. So.
Okay. And you're seconding, Councillor Ritzman-Taninga. Councillor Vaughn, comment?
Yeah, I'm kind of a contrarian in this area. We've had a long history of wrestling with strategic planning and economic development discussions, and it strikes me that the county process that was in vogue the last couple of years has been very misleading. We've spent a lot of time doing a lot of different things. We've made a lot of lists and read them over twice or three times and so on, and we still have nothing. I don't see a single move or event that has been the result of all of that planning. I think there were some good ideas came out of it here and there, but my experience with strategic plans and this kind of general planning is that it doesn't matter how good the plan is, if you don't go that final step and schedule everything so that you decide what does this wonderful goal mean, who's going to do it, what are they going to do, when are they going to do it, how much is it going to cost, and how do you measure the results. There are some of the headings there, but I don't see many definitions. And the best strategic plan will absolutely fail if you don't carry it through to that stage where you identify with the actions. Now, that's beyond the strategic planning. You think strategically while you're developing the process. But you've got to do this other thing, which is it's painstaking, it's brutal. You have to chart every action, every result, and assign responsibility and accountability and all of that. But it really, really pays off so that you get results. We've spent 2 years and we have nothing. Nothing has changed.
That I'm going to comment here, that it's to get the status report, that there's a number of things that there's been nothing done. We say that and we have it, but it's reporting if, as things are done, they are added in to that type of a status report, so that as things move ahead, we know what's moving ahead and what isn't. So I would take that this is the motion to try and track what is to be done. Am I correct in that, Bill?
Yeah, the strategic plan, and I agree with Councillor Vaughn. I tend to find that these strategic plans are wonderful lumps of paper. They're good for holding the door open because nothing ever gets done from them. So, you know, this as the committee looked at it, was a determination. There are some good things stated in there. There are good goals and objectives, but has anything actually ever been done? So because the committee itself is new and it doesn't understand what has and hasn't been done, we decided that those two key areas were ones that we thought were important. We want to know what had been done, if anything, and what the status of it was, or if nothing had been done. And from that point, we can then create some strategies from that and put timelines to them and begin to take action on them, because you're correct. I mean, that's the history of all these strategic plans, that they're great, wonderful exercises in generating and killing trees and so on. And nothing ever comes of them because nobody ever puts forward the timelines and gets to it. So that's the idea here. Now the committee is, you know, this is a little different because it is business people. They understand timelines. Let's find out what we need to do. Pick out the ones that we think we're going to have the greatest success with in the shortest period of time, put some timelines to them and get going. So.
Just one comment. Strategic plans are often very successful. They are very, very successful as long as they follow through and get implemented. And organizations have turned themselves around and gone to great achievements that they never would have done without that. So it's the matter of doing the whole thing, not just putting out a wonderful piece of paper and then putting it on the shelf.
Okay.
We have a mover and a seconder.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, 6.74, the Ontario Business Improvement Area Association Achievement Awards 2018. Richard, do you want to read that?
Sure. So the staff's recommendation here is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to submit an application to the 2018 Ontario Business Improvement Area Association Achievement Awards for the Blythe 140th Committee 140 Events for 140 Years project.
Councillor Waddell moving. Councillor Knott seconding.
What a surprise.
Okay, any further discussion? Go ahead.
I just want to make the comment that the committee, the girls spent a lot of time, and for a little tiny group again, they accomplished a lot. And it was definitely a struggle. When one comes up with the concept of 140 events, it doesn't sound like much until you actually get into it. To try and actually find 140 events, that was a little bit tricky for them, but in the end they came across, and it's nice if we can get them some recognition from outside of the community, from groups that do this type of thing. So it's an excellent idea.
Okay. All in favor? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving to correspondence. 7.1, National Eating Disorder Information Center request to formally proclaim February 1st to February 7th, 2018 as Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And the suggested is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby supports the Reven proclaiming February 1st, 2018 to February 7th, 2018 as Eating Disorder Awareness Week.
I'll support it as long as my sugar's up where it should be. If it's low, I'm going to have to eat. If it's high, I'm not going to have to.
You make a motion.
Moved by Deputy Reed, seconded by Councillor Knott. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. 7.2. Notice of public meeting concerning a proposed temporary zoning bylaw amendment affecting the municipality of Central Huron. And this is based on a discussion that there's possible things moving in Central Huron in a type of development. Okay. Do you have an update on this, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that would be good, please.
Okay, well, I just came from the public meeting for this application in Central Huron. It was discussed by Central Huron Council, and they did discuss, so the application itself is a proposed temporary use by Cowbell for 2 properties. A portion of their property that has the brewery on it, the AG1-37 zone property, and the property, the farm across the road. The AG1 zone portion of it would be zoned, have a temporary use bylaw to permit large-scale special uses on it, so special outdoor events. And they would be proposing to ask for 5 special events per year, with a maximum of 3 days per event, and with a minimum of 3 days between each event. And these events would occur on the Cowbell property in that AG1-37 zone portion. Across the road, on the other property of the farm, in the AG1 portion, they are asking to permit for a period of 3 years parking as well as overnight camping. So North Huron did submit comments about camping because obviously there is the Blythe campground. This was a point of discussion with the Central Huron Council, and ultimately tonight, in addition, there were concerns raised by neighbors, but they did specifically discuss the issue of proposing camping on a property that could offer it when there already is a fully serviced campground just next door. So they did decide to defer the application for the temporary use bylaw, and they would like a chance to hear what North Huron Council has to discuss for it and get back to them before they make their motion on it.
Councillor Mott?
Have they set a date for that meeting?
Their next council meeting is February 5th.
They're February 5th, so we're back to conflict, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in continuation, I have kind of a variety of concerns here, and maybe Laura can throw in her 2 cents, but when I first read this, yes, definitely we have a problem with a conflict of interest with the campground. The second problem would be, I'm kind of curious how they're going to supply water and sewage or sewage disposal to this property, because they, you know,
They would be on the service campsite.
they're going to be totally unserviced campsites. And that brings up then the problem of entry and exit onto either Blythe Road or Queens Road. I saw nothing in anything that was sent to me because it came late saying that we have a traffic plan. We're still fighting for a traffic light, and they want to go and add large volumes of traffic on these massive weekends. That just makes no sense to me that I didn't see that addressed anywhere.
So they would be completing a traffic safety plan with their engineers and don't have a specific entrance picked yet because between them and the County of Public Works and the traffic safety plan will determine where that's either 4 or 25, and how far back from the intersection, et cetera.
So I would like to see that submitted before they approve it. I don't know, but that's nothing we can control. I understand that. I have another question. In that regard, when it comes to, because I read briefly through the legislation, and all I can see is that, yes, this is set up so that they're going to get a temporary use permit for AG1 land for a 3-year period, and the council has the right within that 3-year period to extend it for a further 3 years, and then a further 3 years, and a further 3 years. There is no limit within the legislation that I can find. It says at some point in time, you have to stop using your cornfield for a festival event.
It would have council's discretion.
It's a de facto. So what happens with the zoning during the temporary use? That's my question, because that will relate to, can they construct permanent or semi-permanent structures on that land during that period of time?
So the zoning is still in effect on the property, so it still would be zoned the AG1 and AG1-37 because those uses remain permitted uses throughout the 3 years. So any structures that were proposed to be constructed permanently would be having to meet those zoning provisions. Because the temporary use bylaw does not speak to permanent structures.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and that was one of my issues. So if I turn around, because I keep hearing this rumor about a 15,000 seat amphitheater being constructed, would they be allowed to construct that on an AG1 property?
From my understanding, that's through like seating naturally built into the ground. It would be for the temporary structures that are permitted through the uses.
But you would, for 15,000 people, you would require washroom facilities and et cetera, all kinds of things. So how would they do that?
So those are permitted, permitted as temporary structures under the permitted.
Temporary structures. Okay. Now, I have one more question here, and this, and you might not be able to answer this one, but this one is because this makes all kinds of little wheels start to turn in one's head. Because it remains AG1 zoning, what happens with impact as far as, because you're now using this AG1 property for commercial uses, how will it be taxed? Okay, I didn't think you could, because I'm gonna tell you right now, impact couldn't answer the question either, so. Seriously, they couldn't answer the question, so. But anyway, okay, that, for the moment, I think that's covered in that, and I was glad that we had put in our letter about the camping. Because that is a big issue as far as I'm concerned. If we have a campground and we're sitting there with an empty campground where they're parking trailers across the road, I'm not gonna be a happy guy.
Did they refer to, say, the west property for parking? Did they say a land area that I forget how many acres it is, but was there anything as to the proportion of it that would be made into a parking lot? Or, and if they were doing something that, how encompassing would the whole property be in comparison to just what was reconfigured for parking?
So the entire AG1 portion of the property would be applicable to the temporary use. With further conversation with the applicant, they're not proposing to convert a specific area through addition of infrastructure, such as asphalting or anything like that, because they don't know the long-term plan beyond the 3 years, so they don't want to put something down that would require removal later.
In my experience, that basically by the time you would strip, say, a foot of topsoil, put down a foot of B gravel and cover it with either A gravel or crushed stone, you're approaching 10,000 an acre in doing that. So that what I'm saying is, I think they have to be pretty sure of what they're doing to start spending to $8,000 to $10,000 an acre to make a parking lot, so that it probably isn't looked at as being only for 3 years. Other comments, please. Brock?
Yeah, I wonder if there isn't some, if we shouldn't give some thought, or they shouldn't give some thought to working together with our campground. I know it's not close, it's not right across the street, but maybe we could build a tunnel under it.
What are you, Donald Trump?
So
No narwhal.
So an idea proposed to the applicant as well as voiced to Central Huron Council for their consideration is an amendment to the bylaw that has been circulated to specifically add in wording addressing that the camping would be provided in excess of the capacity for live campground. So because Capital does recognize that the existing service campground is already there, already able to be used, so to prioritize that for any camping required, and then be able to offer theirs as a permitted use once it's at its capacity.
Okay.
So that was another reason for deferral, was that if there was going to be that clarification added to the bylaw, Central Huron Council wanted to see it back in front of them rather than add it kind of in the moment of the meeting.
Want to make a comment?
And I'll just have a quick follow-up to that. Laura, was there any discussion at Central Huron regarding an MOU?
They like that idea.
Councillor Knott,
I've forgotten that question.
sorry,
Uh,
didn't think it was that long.
No, no. It was actually, it was just something that occurred to me. For the February the 5th meeting through Laura, will they have the traffic plan?
No. That
So
would be,
when will that come?
from my understanding, when they figure out the capacity for their proposed events. Because they have a range of what their events would be. And when they apply for the entrance permit within the county.
Yeah, that brought up another question regarding entrances. That has to, will that comply with AG1 entrance? Because there is a specific plan agreement now in county about agricultural entrances, correct? How they have to be constructed and make a change.
One per property.
Pardon?
One per property.
Yeah, one per property, and that property has 2 already.
Okay.
On the west side. And then there's requirements as far as how they're constructed as well, correct?
Yes.
They were changed a couple of years ago. So all of this will have to comply with AG1? Or will they be allowed under the temporary permit to do something different?
I guess the standards would be determined by the county because they would, if they're issuing the permit, they'd want to know what standards they want. Because obviously a parking area is significantly different traffic to an entrance than the occasional farm equipment.
Said they can be moved to, they're already there.
Yeah.
They can do both of them.
Other than one or two. And I don't know how much effect the camping will go, like we got service lots right across the road, so I don't know what extent they want to do, put services in for campers either, so. They have service lots right across, so. I don't know.
I'm good for them.
Okay, I would just make the comment that I believe if the entrance was onto Blythe Road, that they would probably prefer further west in the property because of the amount of rise to get to the road. And for entrances onto a county road, that there's definitely stipulations that are a lot more stringent than agricultural as to the amount of buildup that they would have to have on an entrance to the county road. Go ahead.
Just gonna say, if you move it to the west, because the first portion of that property is the M1 building. So if you go further west, that's gonna put you right in direct conflict with the entrance into the Blythe campground. That's virtually the west end of that property. Yeah.
3% from the edge of the pavement to the property line, 3%.
Yeah. Go ahead,
If
Richard.
I may, so the letter that staff sent Central Huron was circulated this evening. Due to timing, this is our first opportunity to bring this to council for consideration. So staff did provide the letter to Central Huron regarding this. And so the recommendation, just draft recommendation, of course, is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby concur with the comments provided to the municipality of Central Huron by Township of North Huron staff regarding the proposed temporary use zoning bylaw amendment. And further, that the clerk is directed to send a letter on behalf of council to the municipality of Central Huron indicating the same. However, if there's changes if council feels differently about what is in the letter and would like an amended letter, then direction regarding that.
I would like an amendment to the letter to state that since we've had this, there have been further concerns brought forth by not just council members, but members of North Huron, or residents of North Huron, with regard to how this will affect the village. And that we would like to perhaps have a little more, should we say, input or consultation with regard to this with them. I don't know how you want to word that. And I think that has to happen before the February the 5th council meeting. If we're in council meeting, they're in council meeting, that's not going to work out too well.
But I think that we, admittedly, it's thrust upon us right now, and that we probably have to come up with, first and foremost, that it would, camping would be in addition to the capacity of the Blythe Community Center campground, that we would like to have a memorandum of understanding over a number of things probably.
I mean, my concern again is gonna be traffic control. That's one of them. We would like to see what provisions they're going to be made or they're proposing for traffic control. Those are large events here, Calgary.
Yeah.
But I would like to see, remember, it's also going to impact the roads on the north side, Blythe Road.
Yeah.
It's going to impact us greatly. So, and I think, these are great things that they're planning, but we want to make sure that we don't end up in the same kind of situation we've ended up in the past where things get out of control. 15,000 people, that's a lot of cars. That's a lot of cars. It's 5,000 to 6,000 cars probably by the time you pack them in. So that's a lot of traffic compared to even the Threshers, and we know what happens when Threshers is on. So.
And another thing that, and maybe this is sort of the off the wall, but if these things are being advertised as Blythe, that maybe there has to be a segment along Blythe Road on the south side, maybe moved to North Huron's administration. That can be a long drawn out process, but we have tried to be a good neighbor, and we have worked with properties that had previous servicing. But if we're moving into an era where there's extra development of, I'll say, what would be an urban nature, maybe where urban services are required, maybe there should be something in the long range where we look at possibly part of a strip along the south side of Blythe Road actually come to North Huron. And that would be probably a long drawn out process, the same as Doddridge and Central Huron's transfer of property. But it would reflect the shared service from North Huron in doing that, and that there'd probably be a long-term turnover before there would be any economics from taxes, but it would eventually happen. Councillor Wadden?
I don't think that expropriating a little strip of land is it's only going to change the border a few feet. And we still have an issue with the other part being Central Huron. I think almost any development is going to be good for both parties. And I don't want us to be into a position where we're nitpicking things that they're doing, unless there's a direct, absolute negative effect on us that could be avoided. So I think we ought to be supportive, unless there's absolutely an issue that needs to be qualified.
Well, it's just that I would like for North Huron in the future to be able to cross the road and do the servicing on sewer and water that are part of a North Huron system without having to go through, I'll say, the extended rigmarole as to cross-border servicing. And that and that's where I'm coming from, as far as the taxes converting, that might be a very long process. But I think to allow ease of servicing of North Huron services is where I'm coming from on that.
So I was just going to speak to Councillor Knott's point with respect to the traffic control. When we were working with county on the Transfigured Town Festival of Wizardry event, we were working hand in hand with the county, and they're very aware of traffic control and put restrictions on what was required. And we also, in cooperation with Cowbell and the campground and Huron County, erected 8 poles that are strategically placed to direct traffic coming into Blythe. They're blank now, they just have a reflective tag on them. But as an event were to open up and 5,000, 10,000 people are moving into town, the intent and would be that they would provide direction, turn here, parking there, campground this way, and such. So the county, I can speak from meeting with them, is very aware that they want to support all of these events and work hand in hand with Cowbell and us and everyone else to make sure that traffic moves and that there's notifications. And they had a whole strategy after International Plowing Match with respect to notification of truck companies and things like that to make sure that traffic is moving well. So I know it's not an answer because this is really about a zoning application and it's not going to address traffic and everything else. But I think that everybody is at a staff level trying to work cooperatively to make sure that all of these are very positive impacts to the community of Blythe. And safety, of course, number one on the county highways is a priority. It doesn't answer your question, but I just thought I'd just share that perspective from the planning we had done.
And one comment that was supplied by the applicant was that they would be required to fence the perimeters of their property so that they do have very specific control over where the entrance and exit would be one in and out, and that they would be able to control any either pedestrian or vehicle traffic coming in and off of the property, that there's not the chance of another entrance being utilized just because it's there.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out too that the county also stated that there is no pedestrian traffic on London Road 4 or on the Blythe Road of any consequence. Quote unquote. All right, and I'm serious. I'll dig out the quote if you really want it, but they said that. So now you're actually creating an environment where we're going to dramatically increase the amount of pedestrian traffic that may be crossing back and forth the London Road. So this is why I have concerns. The zoning really isn't the issue to some degree. It's just that you're now allowing uses that aren't there now, and I'm not seeing, because it's not a zoning change and there's no site plan specific, I don't see the bones of these plans. They're just being kind of run past. And I want to make sure that they are taken care of. That's my concern, is that just because it's being in temporary usage, that we're not skipping steps that we would normally take under rezoning and site plan revision. That's my concern.
So with regards to site plan, it was during the discussion with Central Huron staff that if Cowbell would consider submitting a site plan for the opportunity for staff comments and for council review ahead of each event, because the layout could change from event to event, as well as the traffic coordination or requirements. So that could include neighboring municipalities that could be affected as well. And then their own staff, such as fire, for example.
That would be good.
Thank you. That brought a few new ideas to myself anyway, so thank you very much for that.
I'll happy to keep you updated.
I just want to make sure in the letter that we do extend to the most Central Huron and to the applicant that we support these events. And these are great. These are fantastic. Just want to make sure that we're covering our bases as far as safety concerns and so on that we've dealt with before.
So just for clarification, revising the suggested motion, something to the effect of that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby concur with the comments provided to the Municipality of Central Huron by Township of North Huron staff regarding the proposed temporary use zoning bylaw amendment, and further that Council directs staff to prepare an amended letter to be sent to the Municipality of Central Huron, incorporating the comments discussed by Council at their January 15, 2018 Council meeting, including the following And then there was the items that that council discussed. There was the memorandum, possible creation of a memorandum of understanding. The modification to the wording of the bylaw to include references to overflow, use for that kind of ground being overflow. And then the third item, how would you like that worded, Councillor Knott? It was regarding further concerns brought forth from council and residents regarding kind of the impact on the village just in general. So
I think those would regard the volume of traffic and the traffic control concerns.
So regarding specifically the traffic parts.
Yeah, very specifically the traffic in the area and what provisions they would produce for control of that.
So traffic control provisions being considered.
That would include both vehicular and pedestrian traffic too.
Okay. And then item 2 was the modification to the wording of the bylaw to incorporate it so that it's understood that that's overflow. And then item 3 is the possible creation of a memorandum of understanding. So are those kind of the 3 main items that you want to hit in your letter?
And I think an expression of support to them anyway that we should.
Okay. So I can that motion is, if you're happy with that motion, we can go with that, and a letter can be drafted and circulated to council for review prior to consent.
Yeah, that's good.
A mover and a seconder, Councillor Knott, and Councillor Ritzma-Tenenga. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. 7.3, the Huron Perth Agricultural and Water Festival Steering Committee is a request for resignation or sponsorship. Deputy Reeve.
I think this is a very important thing, especially for our children who go to school. This is a very learning process. I think it's very important that we support this. This has been going on for a number of years, and there's a lot of students go through this. How much, I don't know, but I think we should support this.
But it's been decades that it has been running. Personal experience of 20-some years ago was a student comes home from that. They probably learned more in that one day than maybe any other day in their school career. That there is the possibility of us taking it out of council discretionary. I think that's the word for it, Donna. And that a $100 donation would give us recognition as a sponsor. Go ahead, Councillor Knott.
I mean, I have no problem. This is good, but why do we not remember this one? We not donated to it before.
We have at times, but
It's not been.
I think that there's been a lapse of us receiving requests from them, so that it's not that we've discussed it every year anyway.
Yeah.
I think you'll note up in the top that there's 600 grade 4 students that will be attending this usually. So it's a lot. And I know the county dairy will be giving out free chocolate milk. There's a white milk free.
Yeah,
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we donate $100 from the contingency budget as specified here.
Deputy Reeve seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, moving to the Reeves activity report. Okay. The one thing that I would really strongly put forward is if any of the counselors are figuring on going to the AMO conference, that we have the names brought forward to staff to get the registrations done. On a really good AMO.
You're talking the AMO?
Rooms become available Wednesday, I think it is. The Wingham Pee Wee hockey team won International Silver Stick Championship in their group. And also, people of North Huron will probably be watching the Canadian men's Olympic hockey team, seeing as we have Justin Peters as part of that team. So that I think that says something for our arenas. At least we're creating good hockey players. I'll leave it at that. Council members with verbal updates on committees that they work with. Okay. Is there any requests of members? In notice of motion, I think we will be bringing forward a notice of motion over the OSUM conference for the February 5th meeting as to our participation in that. And that Dwayne was at a meeting on the weekend as to part of the planning for that conference, that if there's things that you have personal questions or think of, by all means, contact Dwayne as you think of them. But the OSUM conference tries to reflect Ontario small urban problems, and it is one of the better conferences of the year. It will be in Niagara Falls first weekend in May.
May 2nd, 3rd, 4th. May 2nd, 3rd, 4th.
Okay. So that is something else for you to check your calendars as to whether it would work out for some of you to attend. Okay, moving to bylaws. Bylaw number 3, 2018, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of money to meet current expenditures of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Huron. Richard, are you going to read the other part, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can read it. So the motion associated here is that bylaw number 3, 2018, being a bylaw authorizing the borrowing of money to meet current expenditures of the Council of the Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve Clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Wyden, Deputy Campbell, any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, announcements? There's a reminder of the public information sessions, Wingham Ward Policing, January 17th, 3 to 5 and 7 till 9. For ones from especially the Wingham Ward, if they have questions. Basically, yeah. Donna, do you want to talk about budget meeting dates?
Yes, so we've had our first round of budget meetings on January 3rd and 4th, and following that meeting, and SMT had a good discussion at our last regular SMT meeting. So we need to get scheduling some more meetings to get moving through the process. So we have suggestions of Tuesday, February 6th, following the council meeting, the day after the council meeting, or Thursday, February the 8th that week. So would either of those dates work for council? And we were working on the other meetings, we were working at, starting at 6 p.m. and going till about 9. So just wondering if the 6th, Tuesday the 6th or Thursday the 8th, which of those would be preferable for council?
Do you need 2 nights or just 1?
I think we'll schedule 1 for this round and then.
Either for me.
Good for me.
I'm good for you.
Bill, do you have any preference?
I think the 8th would be probably better. We're talking evening, right?
Yes, 6 p.m.
6 in the morning, Bill.
Yeah. It'll be like the last one, I drive all the way back from Leamington to here in time for the meeting.
Okay, so Thursday, February the 8th at 6 p.m.
That would work better for me.
Okay. Motion for that. Councillor Vauden. Deputy Reeve Campbell, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Motion to go in camera. Councillor Hallahan. Deputy Reeve Campbell, all in favor? We'll have a short recess.